Issue 257 Reboot. We start out with the writer trying to make Unleashed to make sense because we're told that Station Square is suffering from an earthquake because now it's sitting right in a fault line. At first I was really confused by the text box saying that the people still haven't fully recovered from Perfect Chaos's attack. Why make the games canon to the reboot? The reboot isn't canon to the games. And I haven't read any adventure adaptation in the reboot. It's just needlessly confusing because I assumed it hadn't happened. And the adventure adaptation in original Archie Sonic was much more creative than whatever was implied to have been canon to the reboot, since apparently there was one, and Antoine says he wasn't in it. So at first I assumed that the writer had Perfect Chaos attack Station Square as a result of the planet splitting apart, which would have been a bit more creative, even if it would be reusing an idea. We see a panel with the text boxes with tiny text saying that the heroes were sent to rescue people, with Team Freedom getting the environment under control. Wait, how? What environment? It's a city. And Team Fighters is saving lives. So, is the former team smacking parts of buildings back as it crumbles or something? Also, why is Oma Chow next to Amy? Well, at least it makes sense that not only did Flynn reuse the Team Freedom, Team Fighters concept from Archie, even if that's lazy, but at least it came back, but he also has most of the heroes on airboards from Sonic Riders, taking advantage of the airboards more in a story so they can reach their actual potential. It would be stupid of the heroes to not use these things to compensate for their inability to fight. But at that point, I have to wonder why these supposedly smart heroes aren't making force field generators to protect cities from Eggman, and using force fields to surround their entire bodies even for a brief moment when they're fighting. And I have to wonder why none of them have ray guns, which would be helpful projectile weapons for them. If they did all that, then they'd be smart and the writer would be respectable. And this airboards thing would just seal the deal as another piece of proof of that. Instead, Rotor still has some serious stepping up to do. Wait, what? Why are we cutting to the Sky Patrol for boringness? This is supposed to be an exciting action series. I want to see the heroes saving people and stuff. That's supposed to be the focus. I don't want to see Sally staring at a blue screen where it's nearly impossible to tell what's going on. I guess that's just a meta thing where the artist was lazy. Because it'd be really embarrassing for Rotor to have made the Oma Chow camera be so shitty. I hope it's explained that Rotor made the Oma Chow, or at least Tails. I do love the idea of Oma Chow finally having a proper origin instead of just being a meta, helpful robot. But I don't think I want him to be used a lot as a character because he just repeat the same tired, forced joke like in LEGO Dimensions and grind the pacing to a halt. Logically, the heroes would have programmed that out of him immediately, but then he loses entire identity. Sally tells Sonic that she'll be watching Sonic through T-Pup and Oma Chow's flying cameras while she'll be directing him from here where it's safe. That's smart, and that's how it should usually be. But the fact that she thinks she needs to tell him she's doing this implies that this is the first time she's ever done anything like this. Which would make sense because what else were they using the OCAM for before this? Maybe she thinks she has to remind him because of the stupid memories thing. But I like that she's called the leader by the text box and is actually being portrayed as acting how you'd expect as one. In Archie Sonic, you'd be shocked just how many of the plans are made by Sonic, and how little of them are made by Sally. And how many times the useful thing she's done hasn't been something leader-like like this. And Cream and Cheese just look at each other scared, like cowards. They're the Antoine of the team. Cream has the same ability to fly as Tails. Why on earth isn't she helping out just like Tails? There's no reason for it. Isn't she basically the same age as Tails? I think I remember she's 6 while Tails is 8. Wow, what an age difference. I remember reading that people were disappointed in the reboot because while they expected Flynn to make Cream a competent character, instead she was just someone for Sally to mother over. Why they expected him to make someone a competent character at this point, I'm not really sure, because that face seems pretty displaced after the Captain Metal arc and stuff. Remember Nicole just going straight up to the Iron Queen? He thinks that making Antoine just as brave as everyone else, and therefore robbing him of personality, is admirable because he overcame his famous flaw. but then he makes Cream take his place. Doesn't that kind of undo it? Cream's the Antoine of the team now, apparently. When, sure, she's been scared before the reboot, but I don't remember her being an outright intentional coward. In Sonic X, like in Season 3, she tried to be just as useful in the action as the heroes, even flying a spaceship and shooting lasers. If you want a team coward, that's what Antoine is for. And if you want someone for Sally to mother over and look really sympathetic from, that's what Tails is for. She can still mother over Cream, but to have her outright be overprotective and not taking advantage of her skills is just stupid of her. It's ageist because she's only treating her this way because of her age when she's barely younger than Tails, who she knows is really competent. And it might even be sexist because she's not just a little kid, but a little girl too. So obviously that means she can't be rescuing civilians. Meanwhile, let's let the little boy rescue civilians. She was portrayed better at the end of Archie, when she was on a team with Big the Cat. We're supposed to immediately take it at face value that Sally's the best leader ever now, but she's still stupidly wasting the potential of teammates. That's the same mistake with plan making that got her roboticized, because she didn't bring enough teammates to the Death Egg, so they couldn't destroy Silver Sonic and the Death Egg. If Jeffrey and Bunny had been with her, maybe things would have gone differently. Also, I guess Station Square was the place closest to the Sky Patrol at the time the Shattered World Crisis started. And that's where they're helping this city. Though meta-wise, I'm sure he just reused Station Square because he's lazy and uncreative, and thinks a game reference would be more charming than having a city with a new name. Which I'll reluctantly admit is true. We barely seen any cities in the games, so he thinks the game cities will be our favorite places. They'd want to protect any city, equally. But it doesn't count as world building if it's just going to be showing us the same world as in SA1 and Unleashed. We kind of assumed they had that. Oh look, as I expected, Flynn has Cream lampshade that she should be helping instead. And I'm guessing the predictable thing will happen, where Sally will forbid her from helping. Yep. And she's not even fucking honest about it. Instead, she just says that she needs them here. And if she needs any help, she won't need help. She's safe here. And usually Sally thinks she can handle herself, and she has weapons. It's nice of her to pet Cream, but she's not her pet. But she's treating her like one. You know, inside EM, I think the reason Antoine kept getting brought on missions was because Sally was trying to toughen him up. He was a hero in training. Cream is literally called a heroine in training here. But what training is she getting? She might as well be at home. Even Sad EM Sally was at least trying to improve her teammates, not lying to them and coddling them. Though I would have preferred if Sally was like this with Antoine and Sad EM because he's nearly useless, and a load if anything. But Cream is obviously way more useful than him because she can fly, so she looks like an idiot by forcing her to stay on the ship. Cream wonders if her friends can handle saving a whole city after they're upset by those visions of Archie that made no sense. And Sally says they don't have the luxury of dealing with that right now. So Cream doesn't have enough faith in her friends, being genre-blind and impossible to relate to, because the audience knows they'll all be fine no matter what. It makes sense for a worrywart character to be grounded in her reality by worrying about her friends because she doesn't know they're not allowed to be killed off or injured. But still, she doesn't look smart to us. At first, I assumed it was Sally who was saying this because it would also be in character for her, and the text bubble was above her. And the tail of it was so far away from the top of the text bubble. I wonder if I should just ignore Cream most of the time and not bother mentioning her unless she actually does something useful from now on. Because these kinds of coward character moments from her aren't valuable. It makes sense for a little girl to be cowardly, but I don't remember her being like that as her main character trait before. Wasn't her main character trait politeness? And her secondary one was social awkwardness. It just seems like he's downgraded the character for no good reason just because it's the reboot now. Actually, imagine if Cream was replaced with Chris Thorndike. It'd be the exact same plot, and she'd be acting the same way. I just thought about that because one of the complaints about Chris was that he replaced Tails as a cute kid who's the audience surrogate. And now it's Cream's turn. This is making almost the same mistake as Sonic X, proving it's being almost no better than it. And the only upside is that Cream's not a human. If Flynn knows this is a problem because he has cream lampshaded, there's no excuse for constantly writing it, when Sally already looks stupid for using the most impractical weapons ever. Sally asks Nicole what news she's getting from the world networks, because she wants to know what their next move has to be. Why doesn't she just say the internet, if it's the same concept? We see some tall structures start falling, and Bunny gets the crane while flying, telling someone else to handle the cable. If all Nicole had to say was that the situation's bad, then that was pointless because we already knew that. I think Antoine's the one who grabs the cable. He tells Sonic and Amy that the line needs securing, and Sonic says he'll find some place to wedge it on this end. So, how did they know where to go? How did they know which parts of the city were having its environment collapse before they went there? Like, the environment wouldn't have collapsed until they went there. Wouldn't it make more sense to simply send all of the heroes into the city to help with whatever they saw? They'd rescue civilians anyways if they came across them when they were busy with something else. She doesn't need 2 separate teams. A city's big enough that even just 2 teams would barely cover any part of it. Amy hits something with her hammer and says that one safety line's coming up, as some people are holding something during a flood. How many people died? I'm not sure I want to know. Bunny is tired complaining about the weight of the thing, even for someone with super strength. Unfortunately, Antoine asks if she's alright. And, for what might be the first time, he actually gets the French right when he calls her his treasure. It's sad that I have to compliment this. Antoine and Bunny kissing and dating was the Ken Penders concept. So if the comic's not allowed to have those anymore, why was Flynn able to get away with these 2 still being together when that didn't happen in Sad AM? Maybe Penders wasn't paying attention to the comic. Maybe he did know and just didn't care enough to sue. Like, especially after the negative fan reception of last time. Or maybe they are allowed to use Penders concepts and Flynn just doesn't let them. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Archie said no Penders anything because they're too cheap to pay Penders for his ideas. But then if they can get away with this, why can't they bring back Jeffrey and so on? Why can't we see parallel universe versions of Sonic and Bunny? We're lucky. After worthless panels about referencing Archie, when I thought we were permanently done that continuity lockout plot holeness, and we see that here, Bunny's definitely getting worse. Because after Antoine asked if they completed each other's thoughts in Archie too, Bunny says that he's the one interrupting her, when they were already dating in the reboot. First she says that he wasn't romantic, and now this. Why is he trying to turn Bunny into Sally? I hope she won't make a habit of having a bad dynamic with him, or it'll be the Sonic and Sally situation all over again, where I'll be wondering why they don't date other people they'd clearly be happier with. I can't remember any time in Archie that she was mean to Antoine when dating him, aside from the one time that she called him out on saying that girls are treacherous, but that was justified, so I enjoyed it. Sonic tells them to focus on rescuing, and we see Omochao flying near him, but then we see a faded image of Sally telling him that a crowd is stranded in front of Casinopolis. Is the Sally voice being broadcast out of the Omochao? I guess so. Wouldn't it be so much simpler if all the heroes had headsets on? And Casinopolis, I feel like this is a fanfiction with art attached to it. I feel like only a fanfiction writer would reuse game settings so often for their stories just because. Tails says that we are over at Twinkle Park. Or is it Sonic saying that while Tails is just writing things down? Because Tails doesn't have his mouth open. How could he talk with his tongue out? Well, someone says that people are trapped in Twinkle Park and he's almost got the doors open, and he's sending Teapup to Rotor to see if he's got the elevator working yet. So it is Tails, because Teapup's in the same room as him and immediately barks. I do appreciate seeing the Freedom Fighters actually helping civilians for a change, rather than doing missions against Eggman, which are always pointless because he'll just rebuild whatever they destroy and he'll never be taken down. Them actually helping and saving people is a permanent accomplishment that makes them actually look like good guys. making it understandable, immediately relatable why civilians look up to them. And this didn't happen nearly enough in Archie and Underground, and almost never happened in Sad AM. So I will give credit where credit is due. Here he's improving things, provided that this is a pattern. I just have to wonder why Cream is being held back when I don't think she was ever held back in the games, and the games should never look better written. But yeah, not only are the heroes being actual heroes for once, but there seems to be a large variety of different things going on that they have to save the people from. It makes me feel like there was a lot of effort from the writer thinking up a story when a story has so many different things happening in it, and has lots for the characters to do. But realistically, I'm sure Flynn just googled what happens to cities during earthquakes and floods. I like that T-Pup was broadcasting to Tails a hologram of Sally's head while she communicated with them. So, was that what happened to Sonic earlier? It seems like an unnecessary thing that took a while for Tails to make possible. Rotor, who looks awful in this panel, gives Sally a thumbs up, while I guess he's underwater. And Sally says she'll send T-Pup to scout ahead, which is also something Tails could be doing since he can fly. But Tails can do more than just fly. And wait, Cream could scout ahead too. What an idiot. She doesn't even have to put Cream in danger, just have her fly around. Wouldn't a good friend instead of a selfish friend humor her? Okay, now I know it's impractical. How is T-Pup's vision not being blocked by that hologram of Sally? He's supposed to be scouting around, but there's no reason to have that hologram there when she's not talking to anyone but T-Pup. She says that even when Rotor gets that elevator working, it'll be blocked by the cars. So wait, why is there a flood again? There's an earthquake and fissure happening, I get that. But where did all this water come from? Why is it heading into the city? Again, wouldn't all the world's oceans just fall into the fissures leading to the core of the Earth? We haven't seen any magical fences from Chaos get summoned around the fissures to block water, have we? What about the world shattering would make the tides higher? Then we cut to Big, who's fishing, of course, and he says that fishing for people is weird. It looks like one of the people is holding a green fish in her hand, but there's another human who's holding the fishing rod's lure. If he's literally fishing for people, rather than just giving them fish to feed them, then how does he not throw his back out? Was he reeling them in lying down? No matter how strong you are, you'd think that would hurt. He says that's the last of the people in the area, and is asked if he can clear the elevator into Twinkle Park. So his super strength will be taken advantage of. With all the different things actually happening in the story, proper tension going on because the civilians in danger, and the heroes actually being heroes, this seems like the first story in the reboot that's actually good. Of the Memories arc, only the Rotor issue felt worth it, because while we did have a spaceship and airship for the heroes called the Freedom Fighter Special, we never saw the heroes go use an airship in Archie that literally launched and flew around just like the Death Egg. So it felt like it was introducing a new idea, even though it's just the Death Egg but for the heroes. So that's actually not creative at all. It's just reusing an idea you didn't come up with. But at least it's got a good name, and Eggman doesn't deserve to be the only one with the Death Egg. This helps even the power dynamic. It's good that Big is being used for heroism by the heroes. Good thing he actually cared enough to go into the Sky Patrol instead of continuing to fish, so that he'd be in this plot. Rotor tells people to head for high ground. Wow, that's distracting. We see what looks like a green hedgehog among them, except he has glasses and is dressed like a nerd, which would be an embarrassing way for Scourge to be reincarnated. He just immediately reminded me of Scourge, but I guess he doesn't actually have hedgehog spines because we don't see his back. It is very good that there's Mobians among the people in Sensation Square as well as humans, if only because that was everyone's complaint with SC1's hub world from the start. But it made more actual sense to have only humans there in Archie because Station Square was isolated, and so naturally it had its entire history being only populated by humans. So it's more justified than in the game. And at that point, Mobians would feel weird about moving there. Why did any Mobians move to Station Square? The Mobians and humans having problems with each other in Archie may have been dark, but it was actually realistic. Rotor tells them to head for high ground and get inside the train station. I hope he never wears his goggles over his eyes again. It wouldn't be so bad if they were transparent goggles, big enough to cover his eyes properly instead of being designed for a human. Sally is asked where we are needed, and she apologizes to Rotor for some reason, and tells them to get to the sewer access near City Hall and see if they can get the sewer line to handle the flooding better. Wait, couldn't Rotor figure this out on his own? He's supposed to be smart. I can understand Sally ordering around people who aren't geniuses, but Rotor is the one who's actually there, and he's smart. Sally realistically angsts as Nicole says that there isn't a single unaffected spot on the planet that isn't reporting chaos. What does she mean exactly by chaos? Wouldn't the only spots of the planet that would be affected be the parts of it that are close to the fissures? Most of the planet wouldn't notice the difference, and would only panic because they saw what happened to the planet on the news. But that still wouldn't actually involve them. It wouldn't affect their daily lives. Sally complains that they can't save everyone, because they only got to Station Square because they were close to it. Well, duh. And she wastes a whole bunch of panels angsting because she wants to make up for being Mecha Sally and stuff, even though I refuse to acknowledge her as Archie Sally. Nicole tells her that they need her to organize and direct everyone else. And she inspired Dulcie, apparently. Why her and not Sonic? That makes no sense. And she helped Lupe, apparently. I hope we learn about how she could have possibly helped Lupe with no special powers. Why is my time being wasted so much? Sure, she's sympathetic, but come on, she was being a perfectly fine leader, and she only started outright angsting because Cream talked to her. And then Nicole talked as if she wasn't being a good leader, just because she had one panel of angsting. This is trying to show a good friendship between them where Nicole's a good influence on Sally. Like it's being the start of showing what a better friendship they might have in the reboot. But none of it needed to happen. I thought they would have gotten past the nonsensical memories crap by now. These aren't the same designs, so they're not the same people. And even a text box in the previous issue called them the new Freedom Fighters, and says that you've just met them. Like saying they're the same people because they have similar looking designs and names is completely contradicted by the parallel universes idea. Scourge isn't literally Sonic. Cream says that she kept watch while they were talking. Team Freedom opened up a sewer line and are going to help people trapped in a subway car. There's so much dialogue. She says Team Fighters are moving people from Casino Palace to the rooftops, and so Sally thanks her for picking up her slack. And she wouldn't have been distracted if it weren't for Cream. Sally tells Nicole to confirm the safety of her father. It's distracting that she still calls her father Daddy, even at a time like this, where he's not right in front of her and she's in a serious situation. That broke the tone. She tells Nicole to confirm the safety of Vanilla and all her friends and start mapping out the hardest hit areas. You know, shouldn't someone be telling Sally that emergency response teams are a thing? That tends to be what happens after natural disasters. People are still being saved regardless of whether the Freedom Fighters are there to do anything. Why aren't the heroes running into emergency response workers when they're trying to do their jobs without their training? Nicole would have been much better at realistically making Sally feel better and focus if she just said that they didn't have to save everyone themselves because emergency response teams exist. Cream says that if anyone's to blame for the bad things happening, it's Eggman. Why isn't she calling him Robotnik? She calls him Eggman like she's trying to insult him informally, which is out of character for her, but then she puts Doctor in front of Eggman anyways. And even SA1 got that right and had Robotnik be used formally in all cases. And Yuji Naka said that was how it was in canon. So he's not just ignoring SatAM, he's ignoring the game the Station Square was introduced in. Orbot says that EggNet satellite data is up and the planet's crust is completely shattered. EggNet is such a stupid name. It never made any sense that Eggman used the word egg so often with machines and stuff that he wants to be taken seriously. And when the tone is trying to be serious, it clashes. Orbot says that of course most of the fault lines are along the known tectonic plates' borders, and he's mapping out everything now. Qbot says that the egg bosses around the world are reporting a spike in the energy that was seeping out of the ground. Sub-bosses was a better name than this tone confusion. It made sense because they were sub-Eggman, inferior to Eggman. I think I appreciate that Cubot's got his accent switching problem from Colors back. Because he used to say it should always be a part of his character because it makes him contrast from Orbot, and he was like that from the beginning. But it was always confusing that this was blamed on a glitch of a faulty voice chip. Because Eggman would have to specifically program in specific accents. How could that be a glitch? If his voice chip was faulty, wouldn't that just make his voice sound different? If it did make him mispronounce things, wouldn't he just be mispronouncing things with no rhyme or reason instead of conforming to an accent? So it's just forced comedy. It would have taken forever for Eggman to have programmed him with tons of different accents to begin with. And if he did waste his time and all that hard work, that would actually make more sense to explain it because he'd want a funny talking robot to amuse him. Eggman says there's no way to undo the reality shift. Again, that doesn't make any sense. If he could have built a reality altering machine once, he could build it again. If the excuse is that he'll forget how to make it, then there's no reason he wouldn't write down how to make it in a journal, along with all of his old memories just in case. Eggman would try to find all the 7 emeralds, and just do the Super Genesis wave again. He's opened Pandora's box by introducing the idea that Eggman could do such an overpowered thing. Why would someone confident like Eggman think there's no way to undo the reality shift? Not only was it forced that he could even reboot the universe in the first place, but it's even more forced that he'll never be able to reboot it again. So not only is the reboot forced, the reboot has no reason to be permanent in universe. You know, I bet even real superhero comics have the reboot make more sense than Archie does. Because I bet they excuse the reboot with some extremely powerful magical person caused it. Not a machine of all things. Orbot once again tells Eggman that this is all his fault for having the idiot ball worlds collide and interrupting Sonic. And instead of Eggman finally scrapping him for his annoying overkill nagging, he just gives him an empty threat. I'm sure he'll never actually scrap him because he's in the game, so God forbid that happen. I don't remember Orbot constantly snarking at Eggman and Sonic Boom. There, his robot sidekicks got abused, and they didn't constantly make me wonder why Eggman wasn't scrapping them or reprogramming them. So of course Flynn went with the game idea that just creates a plot hole. For some reason, after he threatens to hollow out Orbot into a matching soup and salad bowl, Orbot just says that he'd never eat a super salad. So maybe he's so used to empty threats that he knows it's empty. But realistically, why the hell doesn't Eggman lash out at him again right after he snarks at him again? Or at the very least, why didn't he program him to always be scared of his threats? Instead, Eggman hopes he can fix the world so that he can still have something to conquer. There's no reason to write Orbot acting like this. It just angers me because Eggman's written out a character and Orbot's confusing me. Remember in early Archie where Robotnik would do stuff like smash his swap bots? Why doesn't he do that to Orbot? He smashed them to take credit for their ideas, to punish them for giving him a tiny salamander when he could just enlarge it anyways, and he smashed them to avoid admitting that he misplaced the list. That made more logical sense because he knew his robots couldn't turn on him, and he's supposed to be the bad guy. Here, who would react like this? Eggman tries to find information on tectonic shifts and stuff, and conveniently finds information on Professor Pickle, because he's begun to decipher the ancient Gaia manuscripts which talk about a cyclical world destruction and rebirth. What does that have to do with what he was trying to find out? Well, Eggman thinks it's his only lead so that he can manage this crisis. I guess he thinks that if a mere professor has done research on an earlier time that the planet shattered apart, he would know how to magically put it back together? Huh? My head hurts. How would anyone have known the planet was put back together? Like, how would anyone survive the first time? Was it exactly like this time? I don't really think it counts as world destruction and rebirth if, as we've seen here, everyone survived the planet being shattered. So because there's no Egg Army units free near Spagonia because they're all busy securing their territories, he decides to send Ada's unit to kidnap anyone and anything related to Pickle's research. Well, I like that he's got another unit of robots that continues the Greek letter theming from SA1, even if it's uncreative. I think it would be a bit embarrassing if most of the good things about this comic were uncreative. Everything about this planet shattering is distractingly uncreative, and there's no excuse for it being repeated in a comic book redundantly. Sure, I bet it'll handle the plot of Unleashed better. For one, literally anyone could write that piece of shit better. And two, it's a comic book, so of course it'll do a better job because it'll be a lot more stories with it. So it'll have room to flesh things out properly. And by virtue of it being a ton of issues, at least if he had common sense, there's no way that the main Unleashed plot would be the focus of every issue. So it would be more interesting because more stuff would actually be happening in the Unleashed plot. There's no emphasis at all on the civilians being in danger and the planet panicking after the planet was shattered in the game, because this was after 06. So the writers were too afraid to have a serious tone sometimes. Having Sonic have to rescue civilians is good, but it's a common sense improvement literally anyone would have come up with for the plot. Even Sonic says that he wants a better way of managing this crisis, as he's carrying people that I guess were injured. He asks if anyone's around to hear him. This is why Cream should have been helping. Maybe if there were 3 scouts, Sonic wouldn't be inexplicably alone here. He says that he's running out of roof and can't really stop. Out of nowhere, he thanks Amy, but I don't know what for. She says that she always did want to sweep him off his feet. What happened? Did he fall? The art was so crappy that I couldn't tell. I don't need close-ups, I need to know what's going on. I don't even know where they are because of the lazy background. Sonic fortunately lampshades that this isn't the right time to flirt with him. And Amy again shows bad chemistry with Sonic by saying that he's somehow being a hypocrite, because he's constantly doing inappropriately timed one-liners. And Sonic thinks it's cool of him to do so, making fun of Sonic. Since when is Amy such a terrible excuse for a fangirl? Amy loves Sonic because he's a hero, but if she doesn't appreciate him for who he is, how does she even like him at all? It's Sally all over again. And I don't remember her being so snarky with him before the reboot. All the more proof that this isn't the same Amy. Eggman even said that their molecular makeups were changed in the reboot, so biologically, they can't be classified as the same people. This doesn't come off like it's written by someone who ships Sonic and Amy, or else she'd be nice to him and respect him. That's an actual fangirl, not someone who flirts with him for apparently no reason. Not to mention, they're not dating. You'd think that if he was really Son Amy, he would just have Sonic move on to Amy. Like right away. Sally fortunately explains that the close call was because Antoine and Bunny ran into some trouble. How? Bunny can fly and has super strength. She's like the last person who would run into huge trouble. I better be told about what we're never gonna learn what their trouble was, are we? Sonic even says that they're tight on flying cameras. So if Flynn knew this was a problem, why didn't he just have Cream fly around? Anyone would write that. How do you use Cream in a story and not have her fly when it's useful? What's the point of having her just stand around and do nothing? It'd actually make a lot more sense for Antoine to be doing that. He doesn't have special powers. He asks Sally if she has an evacuation plan, because he's running out of buildings. Fortunately, reality ensues, as Sally actually doesn't have a plan for once, instead of her always knowing what to tell people literally every second. So she asks for Rotor's help, naturally since he's smart, and he says that the Sky Patrol was only built to hold 24 people. Huh? How does that make sense? It's already a metal thing that's somehow able to float in the sky, despite its massive weight. And unlike a real plane, it doesn't have to always be gliding through the air on air currents to stay in the air. So if it's already that unrealistic, why would the weight of a few extra people weigh that giant thing down? Oh, it can handle the weight of the gigantic amount of metal it's made out of, but God forbid it house a bunch of people. This is lame. Remember when Rotor used the Freedom Fighter Special to save people from Robotropolis during an earthquake? That makes the Freedom Fighter Special look better than this thing. You'd think that it would make more sense for him to have both the Freedom Fighter Special and this kind of thing. Also, I'm pretty sure that Eggman's Death Egg isn't so limited in the amount of weight that it can handle. If this is supposed to be his answer to the Death Egg, then he hasn't done a very good job. I wouldn't be referencing Archie Sonic so much instead of just talking about this if it didn't reuse its ideas and refuse to be original. If the reboot was constantly showing us new ideas, being interesting and engaging, I would be too distracted by how impressed I was with the creativity, not constantly being reminded of a past continuity. References and similarities make it harder for me to focus on as a continuity of its own and therefore fully appreciate it when it doesn't have enough unique identity. Oh good, reality ensues, because the subway's a wreck. Duh! There was a freaking earthquake! Not to mention a flood. Rotor says they don't have the management or gear to get it working again, and not even the rails are intact. But I'm sure the heroes will manage to save the civilians anyways, because them dying would be too sad, and this comic has standards now. So I'm just interested in seeing what solution they'll run into. I hope it'll be satisfying. As I'm reading out the script, I honestly can't remember. Well, that's probably because so many different things happened in this story that it's hard to remember everything that happened in it, which is a compliment. Sonic says they have to get these people topside when they don't have the resources. And while Sally tries to think about it, Sonic says he has to keep moving. Omochao says that saving everyone single-handedly won't be necessary. And then an announcement happens to the people of Station Square from a dark flying airship. I'm guessing that's Eggman. Never mind. It's someone from G.U.N. He must be related to the G.U.N commander. And she says that G.U.N forces are being deployed to rescue them. They sure took a while. It would have been tense if Eggman chose now to invade Station Square, and he could offer to fix the city. And the only option for people to be rescued would be to go on his airship. It's good that G.U.N wants people to cooperate with the freedom fighters instead of them being jerks like the Council of Acorns. It makes sense that she doesn't know the name of the Sky Patrol yet. She calls Sally Your Highness, and she thanks the heroes because if it weren't for them, they'd be doing cleanup instead of rescue. Yeah, for once they did make a real difference. I didn't need to be told that though. I was already thinking it. It's a bit heavy-handed because Sally of course sheds a tear and it means a lot to her. But she should have already known that. She says that she's used to dealing with Team Dark instead of G.U.N directly. Is that really what they're called in universe? That's a name that sounds evil. G.U.N actually recognizes that and uses that as their name? Is that normal for a military? And Amanda says that Team Dark is doing their part to protect the world. And we see a text box saying to see the Sonic Universe issue 59 arc. So, do I have to move on to that after this? I didn't expect another universe arc interrupting the main comic so soon. Shadow is so overpowered, I hope it won't suck. Because realistically, someone with chaos control would be able to rescue civilians and stuff really easily by freezing time and teleporting. So you can't have an entire plot be based on that because it'd be really easy for him. But most of the time, Shadow's not portrayed as using his powers to their full potential. Then we cut to later, where Sonic tells Sally he wants to sleep, and Sally just shushes him as Cream talks to her mother, who tells her to stay close to the freedom fighters and stay safe. Why isn't it her mother who's coddling her instead? Why on earth would her mother endanger her when she loves her? She says that Gemerald will help her look after Chocola. Well, it's good that 1, Emerald was referenced, and 2, that random new child from Sonic Heroes was referenced when I thought it'd never be mentioned again. I guess Cream thinks it's bad enough that she's risking Cheese's safety. She doesn't want to risk Chocola's safety by being here too. But she was safe in the Sky Patrol. Also, I'm really confused now because I thought Archie wasn't allowed to have Emerald in it. So they're breaking 2 supposed mandates in 1 issue. Are they able to get away with it just because they call him Gemerald? He was called that in Sonic Advance 3, but he was still the same guy. Are they just never gonna show Gemerald? It's the Eggman Nega situation all over again. They're still using him as a character if they have characters reference him and say they have to deal with them. This proves Sega wasn't paying attention to the comic. Because if they were, and they actually did forbid Emerald from Archie, you'd think they would have taken action here. Like how they tried to prevent the Knuckles comic's first issue from being released, and Penders had to appeal to their laziness to talk them out of it. So if anything, That means Sega was paying more attention back then, when the comic was more creative. Why did Sonic say this to Sally if he should have known Cream was busy talking to her mother because he's not deaf? And he should have known it was pointless to say this. Why does he bother sharing anything with Sally? Also, why did Vanilla thank the king? What'd he do? If he let her stay in his castle during the disaster, why was she near his castle in the first place? Where does she live? He tells Sally that West Side Island was spared the worst, because it's the hero's island, so forced lightheartedness. Wait, even though the reboot basically starts out with not only the main characters being tormented by traumatizing memories for no reason, but it immediately moves on to the planet being shattered and civilians needing rescuing from a flood. So, why is the reboot considered lighter and softer again? What, because the main characters are closer friends and more confident? Even the preboot didn't have the planet shattered into chaos. Anyways, maybe it makes sense that West Side Island was spared because it's an island, so it's separate from the continent that's split up. Oh, it turns out the reason Sally was on the Death Egg earlier was to steal access codes, which means that they're able to compare data from the Eggnet with the rest of the world. So they know that chunks of the crust have stabilized for now. What took Sally so long to do this? Did the Eggnet just happen? How long have they been freedom fighting? And it sure is convenient that the crust even does stabilize. Huh, Sally actually asked how anyone can breathe, or how the oceans still function, or what's keeping the pieces of the world's crust floating. Literally anyone would ask this question. Sonic wants to just chalk it up to magic because he just went through the trouble of saving a city. Why are they not explaining the answer to Sally's question right away? I would be much more annoyed at this if I didn't remember learning that chaos from SA1 was what kept the ocean still functioning. Even then, I don't remember him being responsible for the other two things, which don't have anything to do with water. You would think that if Chaos is a water god, everyone in Mobius would know about him, and therefore the king would assume he was responsible for keeping them alive, and just say this to Sally right away. He tells the heroes to rest up because they'll be needed now more than ever. Sonic ruffles Tails' hair, still annoying us with the nonsensical memories bullshit. Why didn't they fade away instantly if they can fade away at all? If they want to remember, why don't they write it down? Sonic asks Nicole to give Chuck a call in Spagonia, and she says she was just about to do so, and hopes the lines are still up. It's good to see Sonic caring about his uncle. Oh, right. He's still using Mutsuki as a person. I forget every time because it's so weird. I forget every time because it's so incompatible with Archie. Sonic is told that the university is still standing, but let me guess. Chuck was kidnapped along with Pickles, an unnecessary extra hostage. Like how Tails was made a redundant hostage with Amy in the Archie CD adaptation. So this isn't a new idea. He doesn't just immediately tell Sonic that. Although Chuck being a hostage too works much better than us being expected to care about Pickle. And Sonic goes on a long story about how the quakes they dealt with before were all connected to what they went through today. Wasn't that obvious? To everyone ever? Instead, everyone else is an idiot. He says that since Chuck was researching the energy coming from the fissures, he'd know if there was a connection. Why did Mutt wait until now to say they took them, pointlessly dragging things out? Why did he merely say they, playing the pronoun game? No one would talk like that. He says that Badniks kidnapped Pickle and Chuck, and research and samples. I assume he's using Badniks wrong, because how could non-bipedal robots kidnap anyone, like motobugs and caterpillars, and bat-bots? Did we really need him to be researching the energy when Pickle already exists in the story? Why on earth did Pickle have to exist here just because he's in the game, if Chuck is a better character and he sucks? That's not unheard of. I've read that in the Pokemon anime, Wally doesn't appear at all when he was in the game, and instead they use some other character. Was I supposed to care that Chuck got kidnapped? Because, well, I kinda do. He'll be rescued, so who cares? He won't get hurt. He'll probably be saved in the very next issue, so there's no tension. I care about Chuck, but how am I expected to care about a guy named Pickle? That's immersion-breaking and jarring forced comedy. You'd think a guy who wrote Sally to lampshade the game's biggest plot hole as if he's smart would explain that Pickle isn't his real name and he changed it to that himself. That would also be smart. This issue was by Ian Flynn. While it was uncreative to rip off Unleashed for no reason, it was impressive when you look past that. It's actually being realistic in the sense that the civilians need rescuing from a flood in Station Square because of course the planet shattering into a few big pieces would cause a problem. The story felt creative because the heroes were doing a ton of different things to save people that they don't usually do, being actual heroes making an actual difference for once. But again, I'm sure that's not creative either because emergency response teams probably do these kinds of things in floods in real life. So we just googled what they did and had the heroes do that. But for once I respected them as heroes. But I didn't respect Sally in this story, not only being rude to Sonic, but also wasting Cream's talents for no reason. If they had a third scout in the air, she could have saved Sonic instead of Amy somehow doing it, with the art being so bad that I can't tell what she did. I feel like I missed a panel. And again, Bunny's character continues to take a downturn, as she's being mean to her love interest out of nowhere like Sally was barely any provoking. And Amy is also like Sally, but being snarky with Sonic out of nowhere, making Sally a bit more redundant because now we have 3 Sallys. Yeah, sure, Sally was being sympathetic, of course she angsted, but she's not the same person as her. She had different experiences and memories growing up, and even looks different. So if that doesn't make someone a separate person, what does? We base our sense of self on our experiences and memories. How do the heroes even have any proof that the world their consciousnesses were sent to after worlds collide was the world they grew up in? They could have been sent to a completely different universe for all they knew if the Genesis wave really was that glitchy, and that'd be a much simpler and much easier to understand and believe explanation than their universe being rewritten from the past up. They were simply sent to a different universe.